All right, everybody. Um, Today we started our unit for uh, dividing decimals. And so when we start that, we want to kind of look for patterns first. And so that was our first topic that we went over. And so the topic of this section is called Patterns for Dividing with Decimals. And you have a practice page in your Skinny workbook that you take home with you, or maybe even leave at home. It's 6-1, so if you need some extra practice, you can go to 6-1, and I'll reiterate that at the end of this video. But before we get started, I kind of want to go over some general rules when we are dividing using the power of 10. So if you remember, when we talked about powers of 10, we said that 10 to the first power is equal to 10, or simply 10. It doesn't necessarily have to have this exponent there. It can just be 10 equals 10. But then we get into 10 to the power of 2, and we know that that equals 100. And then 10 to the power of 3 equals 1,000. And 10 to the power of 4 equals 10,000. And we know this because, a little trick that we learned was that whatever number the exponent is, that's how many zeros are behind the whole number, or the original number. So, for example, there's 1 0 here, there's 2 exponent, so there's 2 zeros, 3 is the exponent, there's 3 zeros, 4 is the exponent, 4 zeros. And this is going to be important. So when we divide using that power of 10, the only difference is here, whenever we divide, a synonym for division is subtraction, and just like a synonym for multiplication is addition. So whenever we divide, we know that our quotient is going to be smaller than the original dividend. And that brings up another thing that I want to go over as far as vocabulary goes. I want you to look at this example. If I have 10 and I'm dividing it by 320, this number outside the house, so I call this little half box, this half rectangle, the house. The number outside that house is called the divisor. The number inside the house is called the dividend. And the way I remember this, it's going to sound kind of silly, but the divisor is at the door, which is here, and the dividend is sitting in the den. So think of a house. You want to see how many times that divisor can go into the dividend. It's important to remember those two terms. I noticed when we completed a Review What You Know, a lot of you missed those on the vocabulary portion, so I wanted to review that with you. And then we know that our product, or our quotient, that the number that goes up here, is called a quotient. So just as a reference, that's a little vocabulary review when we talk about dividing. So with that, I'm going to jump into an example, and I'm going to explain it, and then I'm going to show you a couple more. But basically, this is number patterns. So whenever we divide a decimal and a whole number, or a decimal and a power of 10, rather, we move the decimal to the left. And I always sing that song, to the left, to the left. I always sing that song when I'm dividing by the power of 10. Because when we do this, there's nothing really to work out. We're going to take this decimal right here, and we're going to go 2 places to the left. 1, 2. And so my decimal will be right here. But I have a hole here, and I've got to fill that with something. And I know that I'm going to fill it with 0. So my quotient of this division problem is 0.0371. So this would be the quotient to this answer. I hope that makes sense. Let's look at this example. Now I want you to pay close attention. Do you see any decimals in the dividend? So This is the dividend. I'm going to highlight the dividend in yellow. This is the dividend. And then our divisor, I'm going to highlight in green. This is the divisor, 10 to the power of 2. But if you look at the dividend, do you see a decimal? And if you don't, that's okay, because we know that there's an understood decimal right there, right behind the ones place. So that's where our decimal is. And based on our power of 2, or 10 to the power of 2, our exponent is 2, so that means that I'm going to move that decimal 2 places to the left. And when I do that, 1 place, 2 places. So now my answer is 77.0. And you don't necessarily have to have this. It's understood, as long as you make sure that that decimal is visible behind that 77. So this tells me that 7,700 divided by 10 to the power of 2 is 77. Now let's look at the next one. And there's a couple examples here, and it's a pattern once again. So obviously anything multiplied or divided by 1 is itself. So the first example says 98.6 divided by 1. Well, you know your answer is going to be 98.6. That should be easy. This next one says 98.6 divided by 100. Well, what do we know that 100 is if we think of it as a power of 10? It's really 10 to the second, right? Because it's got 2 zeros. So this tells me that I've got to move my decimal 2 places to the left. So if I have 98.6 and I go 2 places to the left, 1, 2, I know that my quotient is 0.986, or 986 thousandths. Okay. So the next one, 98.6 divided by 10. Well, how many 10s do you have? You know, if it's just 10, you know that this is also equal to 10 to the power of 1. So this tells me that I'm going to move my decimal place 1 place to the right. 1 place to the left. So if I have 98.6 and I'm dividing by 10 to the power of 1, I'm going to take this decimal and I'm going to move it 1 place to the left. Boom. So I know my answer, or my quotient, is 9 86 hundredths. And then let's look at this last one. It's 1,000, but we know a shortcut for 1,000 if we think of powers of 10. It's really 10 to the third power. So 98.6, or 98 6/10 divided by 10 to the third power tells me that I'm going to move my decimal 3 places to the left. So if I have 98.6 and I go 3 places, 1, 2, 3, my decimal's here. I've got to fill this hole with something. It's going to be a 0. So really my quotient will be 0.0986. So I hope that makes sense. Like I said, if you need extra practice, you should have your Skinny Extra Practice notebook with you. I call it Skinny because it's the smallest one. It's just the workbook. And you can do extra practice problems. It's 6-1. I'm unsure of the pages, but if you look at the bottom, it should say 6-1, and then next to it should be the page number. You can do those for extra practice. You can use it with your parents. But this is just basically looking at the pattern of the power of 10 and moving that decimal place to the left. So when in doubt, when you divide using powers of 10, you look at that power of 10, or the exponent, and that's going to tell you how many places to the left to move it. So if I have 7.324 divided by 10 to the third, I'm going to look at this exponent. This is going to tell me how many places to the left I need to move. So I'm going to take this decimal and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. There's my new decimal. And I'm going to fill in these holes with zeros. So my new quotient is 0.007324. Another example would be 384.76 or 384 76 hundredths divided by 10 to the second. My exponent is telling me what to do. So I'm going to move that decimal 2 places to the left. So I've got my decimal down here. I'm going to move 1 place, 2 place. So now my quotient is 3.8476 or 3 and 8. See, is that thousands? 100 thousandths. 8,476 hundred thousandths. I think is how you would say that. Check me on that. If I'm wrong, correct me. All right. I hope this helps with just a refresher of 6.1. We'll begin 6.2 tomorrow for my second block class. My homeroom, you will be learning about this and following that pattern, and we're probably going to try to squeeze in 6.2 as well, or 6-2 as well. So let me know if you have any questions, all right?